Have fun, kids. Note to self: don't drop camera. Seems to be okay. Nothing broken. Can you move your fingers, camera? It's all good. Okay. So yeah, I figure this is. I'm gonna dump that because I gotta clean it. It says 12 cups on it now. 12 cups. I don't know how they define a cup. Call that a cup. That ain't a cup. Anyways, it's I can get about two or three real cups. That's a real cup of coffee. I can get about 2 or 3 of those out of a pot. Meaning, I guess I'm looking at about a 4 to 6 ratio on that. Just dumping this in. If you're curious, the hot water here is actually admittedly a little cloudy. I presume it's just the regular reasons. If you let it sit, I mean, the cold water is quite clear. I'm not really concerned about the water quality, and I'm gonna boil it anyways. So, I do use a water filter in the fridge, and I make sure it's cold coming out. But anyways, it's up to the top there, and then when that goes through, I'll pick it up in a few minutes. But it's quite strong coffee. As you can see, I filled the whole thing up, and I'll. Wow, this is messy. This is gonna be a messy middle of the blog section. Anyways, I'll be back in a few minutes. See, look at the color of that coffee. That is black. Darkest coffee you'll ever see. I should sample that. You know what? 10 years, 15 years ago, I would have sampled that. I would have made a song out of it. I should maybe get back to that someday. So there's the coffee. I've already pulled my cup out, but as you can see, it is very black. There's the top of it. Filled right to the top. I don't know, am I wasting coffee there? I don't know. I've actually reused rinds in the past. I don't anymore. So I filled it up. I'm about 2/3 of the way up. And what I do is I fill it up with chocolate soy milk. So I'm drinking kind of quasi mochachinos pretty much all day. This is my fuel. I will go through 2, sometimes 3 of those a day. When I'm at home all day, it's just right out of the machine. I reuse the cups, so I'm sure you've seen these cups sitting around. That doesn't mean I'm spending, $40 a week on coffee or anything. It's just I reuse the cups. And the city I live in is not unique, but is unusual in that they actually allow me to recycle these cups. There's a plastic lining that makes it difficult in a lot of places, but I can do it here. Okay, so let me take a sip of my fuel here. Good stuff. Okay, so then I take the rinds and I put them in. This is an old coffee container. I would normally have 2 hands for this, but whatever. And then I dump it in to here. Now, why am I doing this? As with the vegetables, the major reason I'm doing this actually is that I don't really want coffee rinds sitting around rotting underneath my sink or whatever. I'm just gonna put this down for a second so I can get the last bit out. Yeah, so I don't really want coffee rinds rotting underneath my sink, so that's the major reason I'm doing this. I'm just gonna actually flatten this down a little. But the other reason is because coffee grinds are very high in nitrogen, and because they're very high in nitrogen, they're very useful for compost. So that becomes a part of my compost run. In fact, that was sitting up for a while, the ice melted. It's one of the major parts of my compost run. Speaking of which, I'm really kind of due. This is my compost bag. As you can see, it's getting near to the top. It's an old bagel container. I haven't been eating many bagels yet or lately because of the spaghetti, but I'll be switching back to that soon. So yeah, there's my compost run. It will be this, plus there's eggshells in here, which are, again, I haven't touched them in months, actually. It's actually a lot less coffee than I would normally use. My coffee intake has actually decreased over the last few months. But nonetheless, that'll be my run. I'm thinking about maybe making it not tomorrow morning, but the next morning. It's going to depend on whether it rains or not. But I mean, it will be some time and on what my schedule is with the recording. But I'm going to have to do that fairly soon. It's also going to eventually get cold, so I want to get that done before it gets too cold. So the flip side of that is that I want to make sure that I get it all out before it gets too cold, because I don't want it sitting. I mean, if it gets really cold and I've got a half a bag there and it's really cold for a few months, then I'm stuck with it, right? So, but I mean, I think I took my last one at the beginning of October, end of September maybe. It wasn't long before I did my first vlog. So this is going to be coming up soon, and we'll take a walk out there. I need to do it early in the morning, although because the sun doesn't come up until 8 o'clock this time of year. With daylight savings, it won't be too early. I'm sure I'll get a few of these runs on camera as time progresses, but. It's coming up this week, but that's my coffee ritual. Very black, very intense, and I drink a lot of it. Okay, so this is the first track again. Last night before I reinstalled the drivers, I very seriously considered putting this through a treble boost because it did seem flat. But now it sounds better again. It seems to be okay now. I need to keep an eye on this. I still don't know exactly what the cause is, but it seems to be stable for a little while, and then the treble just rolls right off. I really don't know why, but it's quite irritating. I can say with a high degree of certainty that the first 8 tracks are done. So those were the 3 I've dealt with, and then 5 more after that. 5 more after that. But I mean, I need to verify that. I'm going to be very skeptical about it if I start losing the highs again. I seem to be able to bring it back just by reinstalling the drivers, but I mean, it's a pain in the ass. So, I don't know. All I know is I need to keep an eye on it. Maybe the cause will reveal itself. I don't want to waste any more time on it. So, like I say, when I reinstalled it this time, I made sure I ripped out anything that had to do with the WDM aspect. There's no. I mean, I want them separate. I don't want these. I don't want this mixer to have anything to do with Windows. It's one that comes straight through ASIO. Although what I learned was that there seems to be something in the middle that's interfering. So even if I am going straight through ASIO, it's still not clean. So I don't know. I know that I need to be a little bit more vigilant about ensuring that the signal is stable. And so long as I'm retaining that vigilance, I think I can adjust to it on the fly. But it would be nice to know what the cause is. and it's just not clear to me. But I'm back to mixing for the day. Best case scenario is that I get up to that point, and then I'm going to have to go towards the next batch. I think they're mostly okay up until I think the 12th is when it first gets. Well, I mean, the problem with the 12th is it's too tinny because it was the same issue as the highs faded, and I mixed it to be very treble heavy while not getting any highs. So I'm going to have to turn the treble down on that track. But for the rest of them, I'm fighting with this desire to turn the treble up versus being certain that the signal is actually clean. In most cases, if the signal is clean, I'm probably going to want to turn the treble up. But it may just be the case that I'm getting a dull response. So the one thing you need when you're mixing is stability. Anything else, throw whatever on at whatever stage and you adjust to it, but you have to be certain that you're getting the same sound every time you press play. Otherwise, you can't really do anything because you don't know what it actually sounds like. And whatever you're adjusting to, however you're modifying it, whatever post-production you're doing, it has to be rooted in a clear ability to understand what you're actually hearing. And if it's sneaking up on you like this, then it's not always easy to tell until something like that snare drum presents itself and it's all of a sudden clear. So, slowly, going over ground that I've gone over before to make sure everything is stable, and adjusting to things as they come up. Now I lost the highs almost immediately. It's the drivers. I'm going to try one more thing, and then I'm going to have to try a different driver install. I'm going to rip it out completely and make sure that the drivers for the other devices are stable with this out completely. And if that's the case, then I'll have to conclude that it's this driver instance, and I'll have to try something else. So I ripped all the drivers for this device out completely. I reinstalled the drivers for the audio card, and I started at the bottom, which is with the Sound Blaster. And what I'm getting is the same fading issue I was getting all along. I have a little bit of a hunch. I'm going to swap the battery and my BIOS. If this is timing, I couldn't actually measure it, but it seems like it might be it. It's just, it's fairly high, and it just falls. When I first started playing it, it sounded great, and I was like, okay, but after about a half an hour, I started getting the same effect I was getting from previously, and it's consistent across all the cards, across ASIO, across WDM. There's some kind of conflict, or it's the battery. So I'm going to try the battery and see what happens. Otherwise, well, I know that it happens on the mixer. I know that it happens on the audio card, and I know that it happens on the Sound Blaster. Taking the mixer out completely means it's not the mixer. I can try disabling the Sound Blaster and seeing if it still happens on the audio card, but I'm going to try the battery first and see what happens. Actually, I can go ahead and get that on film. So maybe this is something people haven't seen before. This is a CMOS battery, When I bought this machine in, I guess, early 2007, it shipped with 2 batteries, and my battery and my device just went off, so I'm going to turn this off this time and go ahead and switch it. Yeah, I've got 4 sets of rechargeable batteries. I had to take one out of my keyboard, um, like the keyboard that's in the living room there, which I never. I mean, it's there, but keyboard is there. It's there. I never. I use the mouse a lot, but then the mouse has a double A rather than triple A's. Or is it the other way around? It's got one of the bigger ones rather than the smaller ones. So I've got 3 that are rotating, and one of them is split for the headphone. The noise reducer requires a battery in it. That's cycling that way. So whenever this goes out, I put it in. Unless I manage to do over 2 hours in a day, there should be always 2 backup pairs at a time. So I'm always good for batteries. It's this thing does use quite a bit of them though. This is a nickel BIOS, a nickel cadmium BIOS. Sorry, it's not actually. Those ones are nickel cadmium. This is a lithium battery. It's for the BIOS. When I bought this machine in 2007, it came with 2 of them. The one that's been in there has been in there since 2007. So it's just a hunch. I'm just taking my headphone cords out, and I'm going to move my guitar effects pedals out of the way. It's just a hunch, but I can't think of any other reason, because I'm not 100% certain that it wasn't doing this before, but I am pretty certain of it. Hopefully that at least gets the idea here. Well, actually, maybe that's not the best spot for that either. Okay. I'm just going to yank this out, pull it out. Everything is still connected in the back. I don't really need to disconnect anything. The side of this is designed to come out easily like that. It's got the little levers on it there like that. And then it yanks out. I can just put it back in the same way. Now, it's just a question of if I have enough light, or I can take this out quite a bit more. Putting some guitar cables out of the way. Okay, so something's pulling there. Let's see what that is. You can't see anything back here. There's no question about that. Okay, yeah, so that's just actually just my MIDI connectors. I can just pick that up a little. Okay, so that's plenty of space, I think. Now, or at least, so here's the ambiguity. There's always an ambiguity. And it's that I think I remember changing this. And if I was going to do that, I would just put it back where it was. So, trying to remember, what is it? You pull it down and it comes out? Okay. Okay, so there's really no discernible way I could tell the difference from one battery or another, other than that there's a little mark on this. What does it say? It says SB4. I don't know what that means. It's a CR2032 lithium Japan standard. This one says CR2025. Okay, so this is a slightly different battery then. It's 3 volts. doesn't have a voltage on it at all. I presume they're the same, but they are a little bit different. Okay, so that is in. Let's just make sure it posts before I put it back together. That's my power button, this space bar. Okay. Actually, I'm gonna reboot that because I want to make sure that my BIOS settings are good. There is some chance that changing the battery messed up my BIOS. So let's see here. There's only a couple of things I want to change. Okay. Free hard drive, done. Storage, good. System info. I can never remember what I want to change in here, so I just have to go through everything to make sure. Definitely want that. Want that. And I definitely want that. I don't have a TPM, so it's fine. Chipset. Okay, yeah, so that's one of the things I wanted to make sure I had on. So it looks like I've kept my settings. Yeah, my HD audio is disabled. Oh, that's another thing to check, is if I turn the HD audio on, does it get all fucked up? Alright, disabled, enabled, da. That's an interesting point. I have my plug and play OS turned off, forcing the BIOS to configure all the devices. That doesn't sound like something I would want to do. Okay. Configuration. Good. This takes a minute to come up, but I just want to make sure that I've got it set up the way I want it set up. See, the temperature's not bad. It's actually the fan control that I wanted on there, because that thing will just roar if I don't have that set up like that. Okay. Thing I want. Enabled. Okay, yeah. So my BIOS is fine, except I changed the plug and play. Let's see what that does. I'm actually going to want to, well, I guess it doesn't matter. I can just go ahead and do that. So I'm going to put this back together again. I'll close the, put it back in, and see what happens when it comes up. Unfortunately, that didn't work. I'm still getting the fading highs again. So, of the three cards, the least important is the M audio card. So, what I've done is I've completely ripped the M audio card out, completely uninstalled, ripped it out of the registry, and in fact disabled in Device Manager. So we'll see if that helps. At this point, the only sound card in the machine right now is the Sound Blaster card. The next step after that, if the Sound Blaster card does not function properly, then it has to be either the card or something within Windows. Before I start playing with Windows, even though I think it is Windows, or it's a conflict over Windows with the cards, I will do the reverse. I will completely disable this card and then reinstall the other one and see what happens from there. But I mean, it's happening independent of that device, so it's got to be one of the two cards or an underlying Windows issue. We'll find out. Okay, so that didn't work either. What I'm going to try to do is I'm going to actually uninstall all of the Sound Blaster stuff first and reinstall it. If that doesn't work, I'm just going to disable it all. So I'll give that a shot and see what happens. Again, that's a bit of a process. To honest, I mean, there's no install files for this, and I really don't. The only way I can see that making sense is if I had to reinstall it maybe after the chipset. I am grasping at straws here. That didn't work either. So, I'm just going to go ahead and reinstall all of these system devices. I really feel that this should work one way or another. It's the only device in the system. I have a hard time understanding why this wouldn't work. So, I'm just going to reinstall all this stuff and see what happens. The next step will be actually just disabling this altogether and going to the next thing. But I get the this has to be Windows, not the device. Previously this was the one that was stable, so I don't know. Okay, so I actually got it stable on the first reboot. I'll have to try a second reboot before I declare victory on this. I did uninstall all of the audio devices except that one, which I just disabled because I didn't want to go through the install process again. But I think probably more important is this. Remember back on, well, it would have been after the successful completion of the first track, but before I started working on the second one. I was trying to find a way to edit video files on this machine in a virtual machine. And I said, the sound is screwy. I don't want to play with the drivers on this thing forever, or I'll just do it on the other machine. I think that might actually be what happened. That the virtual machine, the emulation screwed up the sound. Reinstalling the sound stuff might be the answer to that. I'm going to keep those disabled anyways. I don't need them for right now. First thing I've got a process here. First thing I need to do is I need to reboot it and then make sure that it's still stable. Then I'll need to enable that, make sure it's still stable, reboot it, make sure it's still stable. And I am actually going to try to reinstall the M audio card after. Because if it was the virtual machine files, they're turned off now. If not, I'll have to rewind back at some point and recreate my steps. But it's stable now. Hopefully it stays that way. So on the reboot, I'm still stable. It's after 5 o'clock, by the way. Now I need to do a reboot to see. Well, I've enabled this. It's for the guitar sampler. And we'll find out if I'm still stable after that. This isn't entirely necessary, but it is very much desired. And I really don't. I mean, it was working before, so I think this will be okay. I think it was really the virtual machine, but we'll find it. So it survived that test as well. I've now got the audio drivers installed. I have not rebooted yet. I'm going to let it sit for a good 25 minutes, half hour. It sounds good right now. Let's see what it sounds like then. Thankfully, that was still stable after I went and made myself some toast. So, this is the restart. It's going to run that stream ci.dll process, which I do believe I want it to run. But this is kind of the moment of truth here. I'm actually going to test it with the Sound Blaster exclusively, and then switch over to the other to the audio, which I just installed the drivers for. The reason is that I want to verify that the Sound Blaster is not being corrupted on its own. After that, I will go ahead and launch the audio card, meaning that I'll know that where the corruption is coming in at. I haven't played anything through that card since I reinstalled the drivers, so there isn't really an opportunity for it to fuck anything up yet. But we'll see how that goes. So the Sound Blaster was stable on the reboot, but I'm not. I'm falling asleep. It's a little after 8. It looks like this is going to be a 2-day vlog, if not a 3-day one. I guess it depends on how my appointment goes tomorrow. I'll probably cut it off at the end of this day, meaning this is probably the end of the vlog, so